Hello, everybody. I'm here with Lalitha Donatello. We're going to do a post. Um, I don't want to say post mortem. That's really inappropriate. But
Oh,
a forensic analysis of the astrological analysis of the earthquake in Turkey this past week, and look at what factors could have caused it astrologically. So I'm going to hand it over to Lalitha first. And Lisa and I have known each other for a few years now, and I respect her work a great deal. And I'm happy to have her on the channel. Lisa, it's up to you.
thank you, Gary. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for actually the invite because this is your YouTube channel, right? I will also be sharing it on my channel later on. So I appreciate the invitation. We were just looking, Gary and I were looking at the charts of both the birthday of Turkey and also the day of the earthquake. And in particular, we were looking at the birth chart of Turkey in conjunction with the chart of this, the time when the earthquake, the most serious one, was registered at 7.8. I believe that's the way it is. It was registered. So I'd like to share my screen a little bit. And then Gary, if it's okay with you, we may want to talk about Saturn and the conjunction with the sun, because it
Sure,
happens
of
only once
course.
a year, right? Okay, sure. Sorry, please bear with me for a second so I can
Sure.
share my screen.
We have a lot of time. I'm not making this for a TV show, so we have a lot of time.
Okay. So I believe I'm sharing, right? Can you see this virtual?
That's why people see me frantically checking the time when I'm doing it weekly because I it's on cable TV too. So
Ah, okay, that's
I
good.
have to make sure I don't run over anyone. But now we can go as long or as mad as we like. Uh,
We can make it concise. That's
yes,
fine, right? So we will wrap it up pretty soon. So I was looking at the birthday of Turkey, which is, according to Google, October 29th, 1923, at 2030 in Ankara, Turkey. So that's the birthday of Turkey. And we also have a birth chart. Birth is not a good definition, but a chart of the time of that one, this very destructive earthquake at 4:17 a.m. in Gaziantep, Turkey on February 6th this year, 2023, which has caused a lot of devastation, right? I haven't been looking at the recent figures, by over 11,000 people died, right, in Turkey, and also Syria was seriously hit. And so it was quite a horrible thing. So we're not gonna comment on the obvious destruction and a tragedy of very great magnitude. All right, so we're looking at both charts now, and I see here that, for example, what I see in the fourth house, so the national security of Turkey, there's Mars, right?
Mhm.
And Mars is not the greatest planet for the ascendant Gemini, but I believe this can contribute to Turkey being a seismic area. What do you think, Gary?
I think that's true. It's also been subject to several military governments since its inception, so that also tends to
Oh, yes,
tends to
yes,
reflect that as well. But yeah, Turkey itself,
absolutely. Yes.
if you look at, just not to interrupt, but I've looked at seismic maps around Turkey. That entire region is just earthquake central, or put it this way, there are a lot of, not earthquake central, but there are a lot of seismic plates like right around the north, east, west, south and into Greece and
Oh,
up into Eastern Europe, and somebody I've been in contact with from Eastern Europe has said Eastern Europe's been experiencing a lot of earthquakes over the past few years too.
yes,
So
Italy,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Italy almost every year.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So go ahead. So certainly, and Mars is an earth sign too.
There's
So
a lot going on,
yeah, that's another
right? The
contributor.
military, Mars, the
Yeah,
military, the army,
yeah,
weapons, etc. So we have quite a turmoil
yep.
on and off, but it's a more prosperous country, and now it's part of Europe, I believe. Is it still part of Europe? The European community. Okay,
I'm
I
not
don't.
sure if I'm not sure if it's quite in the EU. I know it is in NATO. I don't think it was. I don't know if it's in the economic
Okay, there was some talk
European
of
Union.
making. Yeah, there was some talk a few years ago about
Yeah,
having Turkey join the European community. I haven't been following up on that, so I apologize for that.
yeah.
But definitely, this Mars in the fourth house doesn't rule out earthquakes. But this was a very destructive earthquake, a very, very, a horrible earthquake, because they hadn't had anything so tragic since the 1920s, I believe, right? So
Yeah.
this is out of the norm, completely off the charts, crazy, horrible thing. So also I see that in their fifth house, all kinds of things, education, finances, investments, etc. There is Saturn exalted, Venus is there, and also the Sun is Nichabanga, so the debilitation of the Sun is theoretically cancelled. But in my experience, I noticed that Nichabanga planets, they always carry some of their debilitation here and there in their
Yep.
results.
Yep. Exactly.
It's not completely fixed, so it's never really totally a strong sun, right?
Yep.
So the governments are kind of weak, right? I believe,
Or
but I don't.
overcompensating, less because the Erdogan government isn't really a weak government, but um, it is it has cut off certain civil liberties over the past few years.
Yeah, and Jupiter is in the sixth house, which I don't love Jupiter in the sixth house from the moon, especially, but from the ascendant, it's probably okay for the local health system, but it's not a good planet for Gemini. It's
Yep.
kind of Maraca, right?
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
Sadaka, I mean, okay. Then we have 7,000, there are no planets, but it's aspected by the moon. And then we have the seventh house, and then in the eighth house, and this is not so great, we have Ketu. Now, Ketu in the eighth house, both from moon and ascendant, can be troublesome, right?
Yep.
And in the air sign of Aquarius, actually, Ketu is not terribly placed, but what do you think? I think that they're enemies. Saturn and Ketu are enemies. So
I
what
don't.
do you think?
I wouldn't necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily say that. I wouldn't. I say they're basically kind of neutral to each other because K2 doesn't act exactly like Mars. But
Mhm.
you would, but I'm kind of splitting hairs a little bit here, So but I've never considered,
Sometimes it doesn't harm.
yeah, I've never considered the nodes to be enemies of Saturn,
Yeah.
either node.
I believe that the Ketu in the eighth house from the moon. Actually, it's in the ninth house,
He's in the
right?
ninth house, yeah. So
I
that,
made
and
a
that's
mistake.
not,
It's actually in
yeah,
the ninth house, which kind of takes away a little bit of the good fortune of this birth chart.
yeah, yeah,
But still, it's a country that was doing well before the
yeah.
earthquake, right?
The good fortune, K2 from my experience gives good fortune and fits in spurts. So you'll see a lot of attention focused on big events like
Uh,
this and also on
Perhaps
other events.
sometimes give surprising results. I consider it kind of unlucky.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
although it gets exalted in. Yeah, I would not say it's a fantastic Ketu, okay? But I
yeah,
don't know exactly. Also with Uranus is notoriously expensive, right?
well,
So
the way I've been taught K2 is K2 acts like its Lord. So essentially, it'll act like we have that little Saturn over here. So it'll dispose it back to Saturn, that exalted Saturn.
so you're saying
But
it becomes stronger like an exalted Saturn,
yeah,
right?
but still, exalted Saturns aren't necessarily lucky. You know, that's the thing. You know, so we tend to have this perspective.
We have
Uh,
Saturn. We have to
yeah,
deal
yeah,
with Saturn. But
yeah,
it's
yeah,
better exalted, I
yeah.
think.
We tend to have this perspective of Saturn, of exalted as being good, and it's not always good. But that will give. If we're talking about leadership and things like that, or overall luck, K2 in the ninth house is it's inconsistent luck. You know, basically that's probably the simplest way I put it. So I
Mm.
tend to agree with you. It isn't luck.
Fluctuation.
Yeah, it isn't lucky, but I don't think it's devastatingly bad.
Oh,
But
not devastating. And we know Turkey is doing very well in
yeah,
technology.
yeah,
I believe I don't follow politics very closely,
yeah,
so this is not
yeah,
my
yeah. Economically, it's not
disclaimer.
doing too great right now.
Okay, so
Yeah,
what I see in the in the chart of the earthquake, we see Mars in the 12th house, right?
yep,
So that does not bode well for a lot of things, right?
yep.
It's a destructive kind of Mars here in the 12th house, the Dushtana house. It may show losses, it may show also a delay in receiving the aid that they need. What do you think about that?
Well, a lot of people have been responding pretty quickly, I wouldn't necessarily say that would delay aid.
In
But
the first few days, sorry, I'm going to quote news reports that they were not able to receive the aid, the help from other countries. So I think the U.S. sent some help, I think 2 days ago. And
yeah.
also, they were saying, journalists were saying, there are so many people, there are so many buildings down where we're not able to reach that area.
Oh, okay.
The vehicles, that are trying to bring aid are not able to access that area. Also, there were problems with rain, snow, and freezing and all this.
Oh yeah. The weather's it's quite wintry right now. But I would view that as more of a Venus problem.
From here,
Yeah, you know, not necessarily.
the
So,
water,
so, because Venus rules vehicles, basically.
and also water, right?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
it wasn't
yeah,
very close to Saturn. So Venus
yeah,
is out of the range of Saturn, the dangerous one, but they're friends. Still, it's a lot of pressure on Venus.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay, so what's your take here? We have an aspect of Saturn or Rahu,
yeah,
11th house. So that can be tricky for the economy, I guess, no?
yeah. I if if you give you my honesty, the Saturn on Rahu is going to frustrate or delay that'll frustrate or delay help uh, as well. That's another thing because Saturn and Rahu are akin to each other. They act a bit like each other in certain ways.
Very
In certain
similar.
ways, they're different, but it's
I
like
believe
having
there's more desire with Rahu, but Saturn definitely brings frustration, and so does Rahu.
yeah,
Rahu for different reasons, you're right, because Rahu brings the desire that of wanting everything soon,
yep,
whereas Saturn takes its time. It takes
Saturn,
2.5 to get
yep.
to another.
I'm
So
sorry.
Rahu here, you can consider Rahu to be Mars because it's in Aries.
Yep,
And Jupiter, I would say it's well placed. Oh no, it's not the birth chart of Turkey. This is the earthquake.
yep,
Okay, so Jupiter expands everything, right?
yep.
This is also water. What do you think about Jupiter here? Is it
Well,
a
Jupiter,
energy?
Jupiter, I'm tending to think made the earthquake a bit worse, to be honest with you. And I'll give you my logic. So just bear with me for a second. Jupiter's actually aspecting natal Mars. Okay, is aspecting the moon at the time of the earthquake. That's usually stands for the population. So although Jupiter's normally a benefic planet, its key attribute, as you said before, was expansion. Okay, so essentially, I've seen Jupiter act actually, and it's a malefic planet for this particular rising sign, right? It's a death inflicting planet. It's a death inflicting planet. So you have one death inflicting planet aspecting another death inflicting planet at the time of the earthquake for this particular chart.
And it also magnifies the energy of Mars here in the natal
Yeah,
chart. Also, as a Gochara, Jupiter in the 10th house doesn't do very well from the
yeah,
moon.
yeah, yeah. So
It's
Jupiter's normally good. I grant that entirely.
in the 10th
However,
house Gochara, that's considered a bad transit,
yeah,
actually.
and under certain circumstances, it makes bad things worse. It just kind of blows them up, it expands them.
Yes, I consider it a great benefic. However, for some birth charts, it's not so
Yep,
benefic. And also,
yep,
I prefer Jupiter to another planet. Still, I know by experience that the 10th house transit of Jupiter from the moon always brings a lot of trouble. Just to
yep,
wait, like breakdown of weird things, lots of pressure at work, and sometimes the person will be unfulfilled in their desires at work.
yep. And Jupiter's aspecting natal Jupiter. I think you said that as well.
Yeah,
It's heightening difficulties or obstacles to a
it's
certain
not the
extent.
best to have there. Yeah, I agree.
So yeah,
Would
so
have been better in Guru Chandala in the 11th house because Jupiter
yeah,
in Gochara 11th house is always
yeah,
better. And
yeah, yeah. So
it,
I
sometimes it's not logical, right?
yeah,
Again,
yeah, yes.
Jupiter
So
in its own sign, sorry, it's in
yeah,
its own sign, so it should give great results, but it's not so clear cut, right? It depends on
yeah,
the house transit, and also it depends for the ascendant, the nature of that planet and the
yeah,
results it can give.
yeah.
All right.
Ju- Jupiter, and again, just to make clear, Jupiter usually gives good results. I'm not saying it causes it, but like I said, under certain circumstances,
Gemini, it can be.
it can amplify things for and make them. It gives a lot. So I'm not saying it caused the earthquake. That's not what I'm saying. But
Yes, I agree with even
it
in the chart, right? Well, I want to say one more thing, and then I'll
yeah,
turn it to you. I noticed that Jupiter in the 10th house in transit can actually bring setbacks at work. So somebody, for example, who
sure,
was promoted, they will be, they will lose those benefits for some reasons. Jupiter
yeah,
will not support
yeah,
them, actually will bring them a lot of trouble. So
yeah,
I would say the 10th house from the moon, I consider it a bad transit. So
yep,
now
yep,
I leave it to you. Also, lots of water here, lots of water in Pisces,
yep,
right?
right,
So, yeah, so
yeah. And I and I
sharing, if you want, I can.
okay. All right, and but I think you're right. If you think about it, Saturn is connected to Rahu, is connected to Mars in this chart. Okay, so Saturn aspects Rahu. Rahu is ruled by Mars, so that would cause a great deal of loss. And and Mars, of all the planets that I've seen, and of all the planets that I've seen quickly, um, I I still consider Mars to be the most difficult planet in the Vedic chart, and that's mainly because it acts extremely quickly.
in this chart particularly, because of course Mars can be a benefic, for example, for Pisces, and it's a money planet.
Exactly. But
right. But this chart is tricky. Yeah,
yeah,
it is not.
yeah, but let me just explain just the basic nature of Mars as I understand it. If you go into Parashara, Mars tends to get a little bit greater weight as a malefic than Saturn does. It's the only place you'll see that, but in Parashara you'll see that. And I think one of the reasons that I've always given it greater strength as a benefic is Mars is really the fastest acting planet of all the planets. So when you see something happen, like a car accident ruled by Mars, earthquakes are Martian phenomena. Wars can build up over time, but the actual act of starting a war is fast. So essentially, whenever you have Mars really active or really kind of critically placed in a chart, there's more potential for accidents and for destruction than normal. Saturn is slow. Saturn delays. It obstructs. It whittles down. Mars, it can take away everything with just one pull of a hand on a trigger, you know, or one fatal accident. So it's not. But Saturn also aspect Rahu can destroy ambitions. It can destroy the ability to correct things. So it's also there's one thing that we didn't look at, and that was in that chart. Although technically this may not count. Jupiter. So I was saying all those nasty things about Jupiter, but Jupiter is also hemmed in between malefics, right? Are you still with me, Lalitha? All right, we're
Still
back.
here.
Yeah. So Jupiter is hemmed in by malefics. It's a wide hem, but Saturn's on one side.
Definitely.
Saturn's on one side, Rahu's on another side, Mars is on another side. So some astrologers like Sanjay Rath would say that's a hemming in of malefics. So any good that Jupiter could do is kind of is limited, basically.
I believe that Jupiter, despite being a Badaka planet for Turkey, birth chart, and also aspecting Mars, which magnifies Mars, etc., can also maybe contribute to bringing, financial support, though, in the long run.
Yeah.
Especially when it moves to Aries at the end of April, so to rebuild, Turkey.
Yeah.
There's another country that's been seriously affected. I'm not, minimizing, but I have not had the chance to go and check the birth chart of Syria. I know that they're having some problems politically, and I don't want to comment on that. But they were not able to receive finance assistance, because of political reasons. So some areas were not being assisted because of political reasons. It's a tragedy, but I don't want to go further. Okay.
I did have Sirius chart a few years ago, but I don't have it anymore. But I think one of the things that this is also kind of there was a lot of criticism. So I was following the newscasts. There was a lot of criticism of the Turkish government not getting there quickly enough, and this becomes important because this becomes important not from a humanitarian perspective, from a political perspective, because there are going to be elections in May in Turkey. So the elections aren't that far away, and they have been experiencing some economic problems over the past couple of years. Economically, compared to the rest of the region, yeah, they're doing really, really well.
One thing I want to say about Syria, if you allow me, is that because of political reasons, some areas will not be receiving help at all, which is scary to even think about. But also, as far as I know from CNN, Syria is not going to allow foreign countries to come in and assist the people hit by the earthquake.
Yeah.
So at least the last time I checked those reports, I don't know about you if you have an
Yeah.
update. That's
I would,
sorry,
yeah,
yes.
no, I'm sorry, Lalitha. No, I wouldn't be surprised with that. Syria has been kind of a,
With human rights, I don't know how
yeah,
they're doing.
yeah,
I think
but it's not just human rights. They've been basically at war with surrounding countries. They've been on and off at war with Turkey for the past few years. So there have been a lot of military conflicts, and one of the things that so there's been I'm not an expert on Middle Eastern politics, so I don't pretend to be, but I know they've had a lot of conflicts with Turkey over the past few years. So that complicates the help that they can receive from other countries. Turkey is a NATO country. I don't. They're not, as far as I know, an EU country, and it's mainly um, because of certain things that have happened under the Erdogan administration. They were considered for admission, but then
they didn't.
they didn't make
So
it.
I didn't follow up. I confess I don't know very well the politics of that
Yeah, yeah.
area.
Now this is as of a year ago. I don't know about recently. They could have been
So
a
what do
little.
you expect? Can you please tell us briefly what you expect economically for Turkey in the, and how they're going to receive their
I just want to mention one more thing, and that was I this is something that actually I'm surprised a lot of. Not I'm not surprised. I haven't followed a lot of Indian astrologers about it, but the earthquake happened like about 4 days after there was a comet sighted in the sky.
Oh,
Comets,
really?
like yeah. So I don't know if you saw it in the news, but basically there was a green comet that only visits the Earth. The last time it came was 50,000 years ago, and it won't be visible for another million years or so. And this,
Sharing that, that's interesting. And I
yeah,
consider them very inauspicious, right?
yeah, and comets are generally there are exceptions, but they're generally associated with disasters or overthrows of governments.
Seriously
Um,
suspicious. Can I say one thing? And insert because
sure,
I'm African. So people think that the time of the birth of Jesus, there was a comet. It was not
yeah,
a comet. It was
no,
a bright star, and it was a totally different thing because Vedic astrology consistently considers bad omens. They
yeah,
consider
yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you go to the Brihat, if you go to
Paramihira.
if you go to the Brihat Sangita, there are certain exceptions to that, but they're very rare, and they have to meet special circumstances.
As
Um,
Paramihira, I've not seen anything different, but yeah, I'm sure you have done more research.
yeah. But like I said, they're very strict. Normally, they're not. It's not a good sign, and they're considered to be K2s. They're all called K2s. Comets are universally called K2s. And K2 is essentially destructive. Also, I just want to bring. I'm going to share my screen and just bring up. So the comet would have occurred. So this is something I got wrong once, but the comet actually occurred. Um, actually appeared, if I recall correctly. This is this is the wrong chart. My apologies. Let me get out of this. I'm going to go to the Turkish chart. Sorry. Let me get rid of this one. Um, get out of this one. Excuse me. Hello, I'm on my call, Jimmy. I'm on my call. Bye. All right, sorry. And so I'm trying to get to the spot that I'm trying to get these other charts. All right, my apologies. All right, so the comet. So I don't know if you can see the screen. Can you see it?
Yes, it's very clear.
All right, so the comet actually appeared in the sky like roughly around here, roughly around these size. I had it down here, but it was roughly around these size. The other thing that we kind of I don't think we missed it, but it was something that I was thinking about when I was looking at the picture. K2 right by is passing right over that cluster of planets in the fifth house, including the fourth house lord. K2 as well as Mars is associated with earthquakes or natural catastrophes. When I was learning Jyotish, the first class I had for Jyotish, we were getting tapes from these German folks who were teaching the class, and they said K2 has to do with happenstance, and we're seeing there as Americans saying, "Oh, okay, so it's like a circumstance or some kind of an accident," and their actual translation for happenstance was catastrophe. Okay, so K2 takes away things, right? That's its nature. Rahu promises, it grasps, it tries to reach things. K2 takes away things. Okay, so K2 can destroy. K2 is an extraordinarily destructive entity. If it's passing over this fifth house,
It's Mars-like, right?
yeah, it's extremely Mars-like, and it's hitting the fourth lord, which is the land of the country. It's hitting the ninth lord, which is the luck of the country. It's hitting the third lord, which is the sun, which is the vitality of the country, and it's also hitting the fifth lord and the 12th lord, which is the house of loss, 12th house, the house of loss. So you had like what I would call a literal pileup of influences happening on that particular day. And the other thing is moon Mahadishas. There are two Mahadishas I don't like that much, just in general, even if they're benefically placed. One's Mercury and one's the moon. And the main reason I don't like them is because Mercury changes signs a lot. It fluctuates a lot. It's not a stable planet. The moon is even less stable. So it can produce, this is from experience, this isn't from any classical text. And
Sorry, Gary.
Well,
Let me understand. Are you sure? This is the chart of the earthquake, right?
this is a chart of the earthquake test, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So,
Okay. I want to point out something on the birth chart of Turkey
yeah,
that I
yeah,
think it's
yeah,
relevant, but
yeah.
have you noticed that both the ascendant and the moon are in a Rudra Nakshatra? That's the triangle of the Bermudas,
Okay,
right?
so let's put Turkey in.
There's a lot of the level of education is so high in Turkey. They have a great culture, very, very
Oh yeah,
ancient. Because it's a Gemini ascendant that shows the level, it's a very ancient culture and it's fantastic. At the
oh
same
yeah,
time,
oh yeah.
Moon and
It had
ascendant, sorry,
it,
one more thing. Moon and
yeah.
ascendant being in a Rudra, that makes them a little more vulnerable, I believe, to these kind of disasters.
Oh
But
yeah,
again, the worst ones have not been happening. Only it's been minor since the 1920s. Okay,
yeah,
please.
yeah. But Arjun Nakshatra is a nakshatra of tears or storms. Okay, so essentially, but again, like I said, it has nothing to do with. Turkey is extraordinarily intelligent. I've been to Turkey. I've met the people there. They're an extraordinarily intelligent and sociable people that has nothing to do with their intelligence or or their ability. They're incredibly gifted people. But I was saying moon Mahadishas in particular tend to be, at least from my experience, tend to be, and even sun Mahadishas, because the sun's debilitated in the chart. The sun Mahadasha has been a rather unstable one for Turkey. Okay, so you're looking at this debilitated sun, and it's still in a sun Mahadasha. It's going to have that kind of like negative energy to it. And sun Mahadasha has given them a lot of challenges over the past few years. Moon will probably be
So do
better.
you,
Moon will probably be
sorry, do
much
you
better for them.
think, let me ask you a question, Gary, please.
Sure.
So with Arudra, what I see is that every major disaster in the world, okay, including September 11, the tsunami, the big tsunami, the tragic one, I believe also Katrina, they all had a huge involvement with planets on Arudra. At least a couple of planets on Arudra, Ardra or Arudra.
Ardra. Yeah.
Well, in India they say Arudra, but I can say Ardra too because I say Ardra also.
Yeah.
They had a lot of planets on that one spot because they call it the Triangle of the Bermudas. So I don't mean that Turkey is at risk. That's not what I'm saying. So if
Yeah.
but if we see some kind of seismic activity, it's also because of that. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
The moon has a lot to do with it, and it's kind of malefic to the ascendant. But this is a very ancient culture that was brought a lot, to the world.
Oh yes.
Contributed a lot with science and even astrology, and these
Oh yeah.
sciences are very, very
Yeah.
strong.
I tend to think one of the things I've noticed is especially when you have so the sun, so K2 is very close to the sun when this event happened. Okay, it was within basically within 2 degrees of the sun when this event happened. So essentially, it's going to hurt this. It's going to hurt the current Mahadasha Lord a lot. Okay, I've noticed this in the years I've been doing astrology. That is essentially if you have a transit to the current Mahadasha Lord, you'll have some kind of big event happen, some kind of significant event happen. And I think that's what really, I think that was the major trigger, at least in this particular event for this, was essentially K2 coming so close to the sun, um, at least in the chart. And we're still in Sun Mahadasha, we're in Saturn subperiod, and Saturn's in the same sign as the sun.
Also, sorry, the moon is
Yeah,
actually for Turkey's birth chart. But moon and Mercury are enemies, but the moon in this birth chart though is neutral, so that helps a lot, I
yep,
believe.
yep. Oh no, I'm not saying the moon is bad for the birth chart. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just tend to, it's a
Oh, no, you
fluctuating.
didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, I was just adding
Oh,
another
you're
layer.
just adding another layer. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that if we're looking at the trigger, it's really the fourth house lord being activated in this chart. There were a lot of other factors, obviously, but this is the one that pulled the trigger, the K2 with the sun, for it, I think. But a lot of there are a lot of, and again, whenever you have a major event like this, there's never any one planet that causes it. It's a confluence of different things
The
that all
synergy
happen
of
in the
all
chart.
those.
It's the total energy and also where the person or the country is in lifespan. I'm gonna just do one thing, okay? So this is something I use in when I'm doing mundane astrology. And if you look carefully, now this is really tough to see, and I apologize for that. But if you look carefully, you'll see there's a moon line running right from Istanbul all the way down, pretty close to the region where the earthquake occurred. Okay. Now this is odd. This is close to Adna right here. So this is basically like right on the border of Syria. Syria's over here, right? So let's see now, Adna's over here. And there's a Mars line. So it's between Moon and Mars lines, this region right here. Okay. So if we go back to the birth chart, if we go back to the transit chart, my apologies.
I believe it's pretty visible. Yeah, that's fine.
Hold on a second. Let me just see now. 1, 2, and let me see now. I mean, the sad thing of it was, I actually did say it was a dangerous week for earthquakes, I think, in my broadcast. Um, but I didn't isolate Turkey. I probably should have. Just see now. Yeah, so K2 is 13 degrees, 29 minutes. And let's look over here. Astro mapping, relocate. So this is where the earthquake occurred. There's a Rahu line over here. So there are no obvious planetary lines going over that particular point in space, but there is a Rahu line like right next to Syria, and essentially really close to that region of Turkey. So this is giving some problems to Iran right now and Saudi Arabia right now, and also obviously Eastern Europe, Ukraine, and Russia. But this point over here is really not identified in the current chart as being necessarily a critical area. But I think this is where you need the individual chart of the country in order to make a good analysis.
I see. Okay.
So there were a lot of factors all working in concert here. I think that's what we can say, you know. And probably
I haven't had
go
time,
on. I'm sorry.
so
I'm very sorry, Lalitha.
no, you go ahead.
No,
I thought that was okay. That
no.
one.
I was done. Go ahead.
No, I'm happy to hear because I'm definitely you're more of an expert in mundane astrology than I am. I always love to hear your opinion. On a more uplifting, perhaps, note, maybe we want to mention the transit of the sun.
Well, I think this.
We're going to mention not in relation to the earthquake, just for the world, right? For
Oh,
everyone.
that's right. The Sun Saturn conjunction. That's right.
Sun is about to join Saturn, right? At the okay, New York, you in East Coast, right? So
Yeah.
so that will be 23:30 minutes. So at the end of the day of the 12th. So I would say February 13th. From February 13th, the sun will be in Aquarius, joining both Saturn and Venus.
Yep.
So I want to say a few things, and then I'll give it to you.
Well, I think it's one of the things that struck me is how much political change there has been, or put it this way,
Yeah,
how right.
that's what I was going to say. A few things
Oh,
about for people who are not quite experts, right? Who
yeah,
are here, they want to learn astrology. So I'm going to give the basics first, and then
sure,
we'll say specifics if you like, right?
right,
So sun, we know that rules governments, but the sun is the soul. So it's important to remember the sun is the soul and also the ego, right? So
right,
because of the ego part, sometimes it's a very harsh energy. So it also rules leaders, politics, politicians, leaders of all kinds, kings, all kinds of presidents, of various industries. So the leader is represented by the sun, usually, and Saturn champions what the working classes, the poorer they are, the more they receive the attention of Saturn, actually the help also. So we consider Saturn, the planet in Aquarius, especially the planet for the masses, the planet for those who work in the manufacturers. So we have the planet of leaders entering Aquarius and having to share the sign with the planet of the opposite. So those who are ruled by the government. And also this is a sign of futuristic ideas and how to improve society, especially for the future generations. So we have Venus that is safely away from Saturn, even though they're friends, sometimes that causes clashes. So we'll have Sun and Saturn alone together, but there'll be the Sun will also cause the combustion of Saturn. So there's a lot of friction, right? Leaders fighting with each other. Also, the Saturn is aspecting Leo, the sign of leaders, right?
Yeah.
Politicians. So we see all these governments have been at all with each other. I believe that can be increased, that turmoil among between governments, basically. And the sun in an air sign is not at its best. Again, it has to share this sign with Saturn. They're enemies, the worst enemies, actually. So do you want to say? I'll say the myth, right?
Yeah, sure, sure.
The myth why they hate each other. So this.
Yeah, it's the father and son hate, right? Son is Saturn's father.
Yeah, very deep, and it doesn't go away, even though then I think some Puranas talked about reconciliation, but essentially the sun is the father of Saturn, and he had this son with the shadow wife, not
Yes.
with his real wife, with a clone of his wife, and being a shadow being, her child, gave birth to a very dark child, Saturn. And the sun immediately said, that's not my son for sure. My son will not be so dark. So the sun kicked Saturn, and Saturn became lame because of it. So they don't love each other. And there was some type of reconciliation. I'm not sure, I haven't looked into it, but overall they're enemies. So we have a bad conjunction basically for a month. And I believe, like everything ruled by Leo will be affected. There's a lot of pressure on Leo now. But Leo has a good relationship with Saturn, right? Because it's the seventh lord. Although there is this talk, right? What do you think, Gary? That I think that Leo people get like a Saturn partner, like Cancer people. So sometimes there isn't the best union, the best emotional connection, but there's a happy marriage often, but there's always sometimes there are odds emotionally, there's something off. So they're not really alike, they're opposites. Okay.
Well, if I can tell you my own take on this, you're going to see. I think the Sun Saturn conjunction is going to humble a lot of leaders around the world.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I really do. And you'll see calls for new leadership. Uh, in a lot of countries. Whether that'll last um, to elections is anybody's guess. But
social unrest for sure. There will be social unrest. People saying that's enough of this one situation. Will not accept it anymore. So that can happen for sure during this 1 month.
Yeah, and also as a result of that, you'll also see governments getting more repressive. I think that's the downside to this. The upside to it is you'll actually see people trying to push forward new answers. Um, and the Venus conjunction, I wouldn't necessarily rule out of this picture because people want a better life. They want more comforts. They've been pushed into a deprivational mode over the past year and a half.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
again, the United States has not suffered as intensely as other parts of the world, but other parts of the world, like especially we look at Pakistan, Afghanistan, certain parts of South America, certain parts of Europe, there, and obviously Russia and Ukraine, and even China. Those countries are hurting, um, comparatively speaking. But I think everybody's feeling like kind of like confined or constricted, and that Venus
Venus has a
is,
lot to do with it.
yeah,
Yes.
and that Venus can also give a lack of food, a lack of
I'm going to say
resources.
the price hikes of food, because Venus also rules food, being the second house, second
Yeah,
major house.
yeah,
That may
and
cause a further increase of food prices. I
yeah,
mean, we have seen a 13% hike just 1 year in
yeah,
the United States alone. So
yeah,
I cannot count other
yeah,
countries, but that's unusual.
yeah, and
But
just general luxuries and happiness. So
yes,
I think one of the things you're going to see is, especially after Venus goes over into Pisces, which is about 3 more days, you'll see,
can't wait for
yeah,
that.
you'll see a lot more efforts to try to make people more comfortable, but it'll be delayed. I think you're going to see people wanting to be
Uplifting.
happier, wanting to have more access to things, but that Sun Saturn just essentially governments just kind of um, at odds with each other, at odds internally, at odds with each other for about at least another month. Hopefully, you'll have
May I
breakout.
say something? Sorry, but then I want to interrupt you.
Oh, no, that's okay.
um, Venus, being the Karaka of happiness, as Gary said, Venus will move to Pisces and will contribute to uplifting a little bit of everyone,
Yep,
because Venus in Pisces gives some of the best results. I consider the exaltation of Venus better than Venus in its own signs. So Venus will be very strong, very uplifting with Jupiter, the ruler. It will be a wonderful thing for the world, because we're a little bit, all of us are sad for what happened in Turkey,
yeah,
in Syria, and also the prices are crazy. A lot of people cannot afford food anymore. We're talking about a lot of sadness in the world.
yeah,
So Venus will go a long way to uplift
yeah,
the mood, bring some beauty, and add a higher octave of Venus, which is the noble Venus. Chant mantras, look at the upper, the bright side of things, and
yeah,
bring a lot of hope, basically,
yeah.
right?
And I'm hoping it'll do that. The only problem I'm looking at is we still have Saturn aspecting Rahu, and we will have that for quite a while to come. So I so
October.
so hopefully some people will be essentially trying to come forth with some solutions, but governments will be slow to act. That's the only drawback I see to that combination. So you'll have people saying, "Why can't we do this?" The people in general, or even people in education, because Venus and Jupiter are co-rulers of education. Um, and I think you'll see more idealism coming out, more
Yes,
optimism coming out. But
and spiritual vibes also.
yeah,
Spirituality will be,
yep, yep, yep.
hopefully
So
return.
yep.
We
So I'm hoping that'll manifest. But I'm still a little bit concerned with the longer term that it's going to be it's going to be kind of a long haul with Saturn aspecting Rahu until the end of the year. But we'll see what
until
happens.
have
Yeah,
the exact date when Rahu will move to Pisces. I mean, the
yeah, yeah.
not,
I
yeah.
I, 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 I think you'll see a little bit of relief.
October 20 something or
Y-
October 20. I
Yeah,
don't remember.
yeah, yeah. I think you'll see a little bit of relief, but I do see people getting much more optimistic, much more maybe giving with the Venus Jupiter conjunction than they have been, more willing to compromise. So that's good. But again, like I said, this Sun Saturn conjunction, that to me spells government deadlock, unfortunately. So it's so people will be ready to move. Governments won't necessarily be ready to move. So
I see it
that's
also
the
as
downside.
big government, Sun and Saturn
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
Very
So
big, very noticeable, like a heavy hand or some kind of thing like
yeah,
that.
yeah. So there's reason to be optimistic, but I think I think we're going to have to really wait until Sun gets into Pisces before we see any real concrete activity. Um, and so,
We have an
but
eclipse. You want to say mention the eclipse in April? Just
um,
before.
yeah,
That's a
yeah,
really, that's a
that's
very
gonna be interesting. That's gonna be interesting.
total solar eclipse just before Jupiter moves into Aries. So that's
I
a time to watch
go
and
ahead.
not start any new projects on at that time.
Yeah, I think one of the things about that is that's sort of like the prelude for Jupiter, the Jupiter Rahu conjunction. So I think that it's a time when there'll be a great deal of promise, but it won't be realistic. But I also see people feeling just a little bit better. The eclipse, though, I think is going to cause some panic in economic markets and some panic in leadership overall. That's what I'm seeing happening. And I think, and like I said, I think you're going to see a big shift in leadership. Now, we've already seen it, as a matter of fact, in different countries. England just experienced uh, that that really wacky flip of the
Did you see
prime
that?
minister,
Yes.
the 3 week prime
I
minister.
know.
So
Can you imagine, right, Gary? Do you mind if I insert one comment?
sure, no, please,
The nomination of the new PM in the UK happened on a very dangerous eclipse day.
yeah,
It happened on the 20, was it the 15th of October when we had an eclipse in Libra, remember?
yeah,
We K2. So that was not one of the best eclipses, if there's
yeah,
such a thing. They're always negative, but I
yeah,
consider them negative. But that was a very big one.
yeah.
And
I,
that's the day it was nominated. So hopefully everything will be fine.
well, I don't know. I think you may see another flip in England and some European countries around that time. I just think this year, um, it, hopefully, it'll go smoothly. I'm just seeing this as kind of a. This reminds me a lot of the late '60s, early '70s. The planetary patterns remind me a lot of that.
Even 60s,
Yeah,
60s.
yeah. I'm old enough to remember that, Lolita. You're too young. I was actually, I was
I'm
actually,
actually a baby.
yeah,
I was little. I
yeah,
was
I was actually in high school and college at that time, and everybody was really peeved as somebody or other at that time. So so hopefully we won't get involved in another war. That's some astrologers are predicting that. I'm not. I don't think
I
it's
don't
really.
think a global war that
Yeah,
I would rule that out, but definitely some countries can fight with each other and there will
oh
be
yeah,
broken diplomatic relations between
yeah,
countries. So
yeah,
that's a very real
oh yeah,
possibility.
yeah, yeah. I'm not, and oh yeah, oh yeah, it's a definite possibility. But I also think you're going to see a lot of government disruption over the next few months. And again,
And
it'll be sparked in part by the idealism. this popping up with a Venus Jupiter conjunction
Let's
because
hope that that will be enough to tame all the hearts, because I see a lot of country rushing to get nuclear weapons, and
yeah
that's not a good thing in my
yeah
view as a non-politician. To
yeah
me, that's not
I don't
the
think
best.
I don't think we're going to see a nuclear war. Right?
No,
By
not definitely not this
no
year.
no
Still,
no.
I see a lot of armaments coming up.
Oh
So
yeah
people are rushing to secure a nuclear bomb or two.
yeah.
Unfortunately.
But a lot of that's being precipitated by economic conditions, which actually something could be done about. But that's bad grammar, but so they could do something about that over the next few months
And there'll
if
be
they.
good things, right? Also, we must say with Saturn in Aquarius, good things for the world also can happen.
Yeah, yeah,
And Jupiter is always very busy doing things in Aries. So that conjunction is bad for wisdom, but I think it can bring innovation in technology,
yeah,
good things in engineering, real estate, and deals, all kinds of deals. There'll be some kind of wackiness, like or wickedness. It's probably a better word.
yeah,
We don't know how that will play out. I'm not very enthusiastic about it, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not 100%, right?
yeah,
Especially Jupiter in Barani, like for new in Ashwini, for new cures and allopathic
yeah,
medicine boost, and hopefully also allopathic medicine, because I like
yeah,
that
yeah. But I agree with you about Jupiter and Barani.
junction.
Yeah, it's I again we there how we interact with the planets as people is important as well because it's not really so we're given a certain set of energies in our bodies and ourselves, and the world is given a certain set of energies. How we respond to that, whether we respond to that wisely or foolishly, is really up to us. You know, so,
Individually, we need to do our work and stay more positive, definitely, and also be more loving.
yep,
This is the oldest medicine in the world, right? Stronger than Sanjivani. Love is a healer.
yep,
Love,
yep,
forgiveness, forgiving people, not holding grudge. All those things will be necessary if we want to make it. Collectively, we need to be very careful and
yep,
do our part.
yep,
Meditation would be important, mantras, and also doing good deeds, helping others,
yep,
and forgiving. That's a biggie. The energy of the earth plane. The earth plane can ascend if we forgive each other forever and we really love each other. Everything will shift, right?
yep, yep. So I think that's a big challenge over the next. I think over the next couple of months, it's going to be kind of a critical time for us because we'll have this opportunity to really think high thoughts and to dream big dreams. And it'll be up to us as to whether or not to decide whether or not we want to tear people down or build people up or do what's right. And I think that's the big challenge for. And really, it's up to us. You know, these are circumstances. Even our souls, they've incarnated for certain reasons, but
Yeah.
we reincarnate in these forms for certain reasons, but even that, it depends on what you do with the materials more so than the materials you're given.
We are creators, absolutely. We have a lot of power too. We shouldn't just consider this fatalistic. We know that individually we can do a lot, and it's up to us, right? We
Right.
can shift, we can do a lot, we can even become enlightened. I mean, there's a lot
Oh
good
yeah.
things will happen too. We shouldn't just we're not saying, Gary and I are not saying that only bad things will happen.
No,
Far from,
no.
actually, we have a lot of opportunities for growth and also for enlightenment even.
Oh yeah. And sometimes these difficult combinations encourage the fastest progress because you won't change if you're told smoking will kill you in 20 years. You say, well, I got 20 years to quit smoking. If
Maybe not.
yeah, maybe not, maybe not. But I'm using a bad analogy. But let's say if you say if you don't change tomorrow, you're going to lose
Kidding. Yeah.
everything. It brings an immediacy to it. So so essentially, sometimes these adverse planetary patterns can be helpful if we apply some logic and some emotional maturity and love to them, as you said.
Just be loving and don't think that war is ever a solution, unless it's really necessary for defense. Like the Pandavas, they had to defend each other themselves from an attacker, very real one, Duryodhan.
Yep.
But he lost the war.
Yeah.
Do
But
you
but
mind
but
if
he
I tell
lost.
the story of that? I love the story how Krishna tricked Duryodhan. First of all, Duryodhan asked Krishna, when should I start a war so I can win it? He had no shame. And so Krishna told him, well, ask the Pandava. He's a great astrologer. What was his name? The great astrologer, very
Oh,
pure.
I
I
know
want to
you.
say Vasudev, but I don't think it was Vasudev. Something like that. And he said he will tell you the truth because he's very pure. And in fact, the astrologer, being a good astrologer, really a noble astrologer, Vedic astrologer, said yes, you should start the war during Chatudarshi. Chatudarshi, it was waning moon, right? Krishna Chatudarshi, 14th moon, and because everything destructive, supposedly that you start at that time will succeed. But Krishna tricked him, went to do something in the sky, and he actually was able, through a tarpanam, which is an ancestor ritual, he was able to move the sun and the moon together. So they became Amavasya. And anything you start on Amavasya, even destructive things will fail because there's no moon, right?
Yep.
So I love that story. So yeah, I think that collectively we have to choose love. And I feel that will create a lot of momentum that can avoid bad situations on the airplane.
Yep.
Because most people, I think, don't want wars. The great majority of humanity wants peace. So we need to manifest, basically.
Yeah. And even if the idea of love seems a little corny to individuals, let's put it
Only
this way.
because artificially it was created, right? It
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
you and I, it
yeah.
was
Let,
media, culture.
let's put it this way. Without love, you would have never come into being. You wouldn't be here.
It wouldn't be here.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be talking to you today.
so you don't have to use the word. You can think of it as being essentially self-preservation or preservation
Well, actually,
or good energy.
you can rationalize it, but think about it. Love means God is love. Love is God. Also, love itself, from my teacher, Dr. Pillai, says that is an enlightened master. Love itself is God.
Yep.
So doesn't need to be Valentine's Day love. That's an expression of love, I guess,
Sure.
but not the real love. Love is what? Forgive your enemies, love everybody, love your neighbor who is not nice to you. Love everyone. It's not easy, but we must, or
Yeah.
else.
Oh, sure.
I
Oh,
think this is
sure.
the time when we're
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
tested to the maximum. I have to jump off, but I really enjoyed it as usual.
Same here, my friend. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Lalitha.
you. Thank you very much.
All right.
Enjoyed
Cheers.
it. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.